The Capitol was quiet, too quiet. Outside, clouds rolled in over Washington like a storm waiting for permission. Inside, the air was thick with anticipation, like something was about to break. The hearing room didn't buzz, it pulsed. Reporters lined the back wall, some standing, some kneeling, all recording. Microphones were hot, cameras were live, the entire country was watching. The hearing had a name, the role of government in oversight of big tech. But everyone in that room knew this wasn't about oversight. This was a showdown, and the first to take the stage, Congressman Jim Jordan. He didn't walk in, he charged in. His shoulders were square, his jaw locked tight like a man preparing for war. In one hand, a thick stack of printed tweets and flagged videos. In the other, his phone still buzzing with conservative outrage. Behind him, his staff carried oversized poster boards, blown-up screenshots of deleted content headlines like Facebook silences, veterans YouTube erases dissent, and they didn't just walk in with evidence. They walked in with fire. Jim Jordan took his seat like a man sitting on a powder keg. He placed the gavel down with force, not softly, not symbolically, but like a man declaring territory. He scanned the room, one glance at the Democratic side, then back to his notes. But what he didn't see, what the cameras did, was the woman sitting directly across from him. Jasmine Crockett, calm, composed, not a hair out of place, her posture unshaken. In front of her, a single red folder. Closed, untouched, but somehow louder than any headline in the room. She didn't speak, she didn't blink. But when Jim Jordan slammed the gavel, the room jumped. Jasmine didn't. That silence, that stillness. It wasn't passivity, it was readiness. And that folder? It wasn't just a file. It was a fuse. The gavel hit the desk, not once, twice, loud, sharp, final. Jim Jordan leaned forward, his voice tight-clipped, surgical. We are living in a digital dictatorship. He let the words hang, heavy, like smoke before fire. Big tech, he said, has done what no foreign enemy could. They've silenced Americans, not with guns, not with bombs, but with algorithms. He raised a single sheet of paper, a printed tweet. This was a decorated Marine. He questioned the election. Within 20 minutes, Twitter flagged him. Within 1 hour, he was suspended. He tossed the paper to the side. This isn't moderation. This is erasure. He grabbed another page, a screenshot of a Tucker Carlson segment. YouTube deleted this clip. No hate speech, no profanity, just concern about vaccine side effects. And poof, gone. His tone sharpened. This is ideological cleansing of the digital public square. The room tensed. You could feel it in the air. Aides on the Republican side nodded, fists clenched. A few muttered, damn right. Jordan stood now, not pacing, but commanding. This isn't about safety. This is about control. He slammed his hand down. When you erase voices, when you suppress ideas, when you filter out dissent, that's not democracy. That's tyranny wearing a hoodie. Behind him, the poster boards glared. YouTube bans conservatives. Facebook punishes veterans. Jordan's eyes narrowed. Big tech wants you to believe this is accidental. He leaned in. His voice dropped to a growl. But I've seen the emails. I've seen the coordination. With government, with media, with each other. A pause, and today we're going to expose it all. While the room burned with outrage, one figure didn't move. She didn't stand. She didn't interrupt. She didn't roll her eyes or flinch. Jasmine Crockett just sat, one hand resting gently on a red folder, the other folded neatly in her lap. Her posture didn't speak of weakness, it radiated control, like a chess master who already saw 5 moves ahead. As Jim Jordan roared, Jasmine remained silent, but her silence had weight, not the weight of surrender, but of strategy. Her eyes tracked his every move, not in anger, in precision. She wasn't here to argue. She was here to end arguments. The red folder in front of her hadn't moved an inch, but it might as well have been a live wire because every camera had found it. Cameramen panned slowly toward her, 1 by 1, then 2 by 2. The lens didn't blink. Neither did she. She wasn't waiting to speak. She was waiting for the noise to exhaust itself, and deep down, everyone in that room could feel it. When she finally opened her mouth, it wouldn't be to raise her voice. It would be to change everything. Jordan stood taller now. The gavel rested on the desk, silent, but his voice louder, sharper, fueled by something deeper than anger. Let me show you what they don't want you to see. He grabbed a page, held it high. This right here is a tweet by a mother of three. She asked why her son's post about vaccine side effects was removed. Her account gone within 12 hours. He didn't wait for gas. He had more. This is a video clip from Tucker Carlson. He questioned the government's version of events. YouTube took it down. Within the day, he slammed the papers on the desk. And this isn't just happening to conservatives. It's happening to veterans, teachers, nurses, ordinary Americans with ordinary questions. Jordan's voice dropped, and that made it even louder. We are living in a dictatorship, not of tanks, not of soldiers, but of algorithms. His eyes scanned the room. You think you're safe because you're quiet? You think they won't come for your voice next? He let that land. This isn't content moderation. This is digital cleansing. This is erasure by design. He pointed to the wall of exhibits, screenshots, tweets, videos, blurred out accounts. This is not freedom. This is fiction wrapped in code. And today we are tearing that fiction apart. The room didn't respond. No one interrupted. No one pushed back. But the silence was dangerous. It wasn't agreement. It was pressure. A slow, suffocating build-up, like the moment before thunder. Jordan's words weren't just loud. They were surgical. He knew where to cut, and he was cutting deep. When government and tech hold hands, the Constitution bleeds, he said. Republican lawmakers nodded. Some clapped softly. One even stood up briefly, shouting, "Finally, someone says it." The energy shifted, not just in volume, but in loyalty. Jordan wasn't just speaking. He was gathering an army. Reporters leaned forward. Cameras tilted. Clicks echoed from every angle. In the far back, a senior journalist whispered, "Has not wrong about the censorship part." Another voice answered, "Maybe, but let's see how far he pushes it." The air turned heavy. People weren't breathing normally anymore. They were bracing. Jasmine Crockett remained still, silent. But everyone in the room pressed politicians public. They all knew this wasn't the end of a speech. It was the start of a collision. The storm didn't start with thunder. It started with a camera zoom. Every lens in the room shifted slowly, purposefully toward Jasmine Crockett. Her eyes were still locked forward, still unblinking. But then she nodded, just once. It wasn't theatrical. It wasn't rehearsed. It was quiet, intentional, and somehow it was louder than anything Jim Jordan had shouted. One of the cameras caught it first. The others followed like dominoes. The red folder in front of her had been there since the hearing began, untouched, like a sleeping dragon no one dared to provoke. Now she reached for it, slowly, calmly. Her fingers touched the top edge. No dramatic flourish, no sudden movement. She flipped the cover open, just enough for the light to catch the first line of paper. A glimmer of white against the red. And just like that, the entire room leaned in. The room didn't know what was coming, but it knew this. The hearing had just shifted, and Jasmine Crockett was no longer silent. She was arming the facts. Jasmine Crockett didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She had the room, and now she had the evidence. Let the record reflect. She began flipping to the first page. This is dated October 14, 2020. 10:47 a.m. The microphone carried her voice across the chamber, calm, steady, controlled. From Senior Policy Advisor, DHS, to Director of Content Moderation, redacted platform. Then she read the line that punched the air out of the room. "Please flag this conservative account quietly. We don't want a headline." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was electric. Jasmine turned the page. No theatrics, no hesitation. Second email, November 2nd, 2020, 9:18 p.m. from Strategic Communications Executive Branch. To Trust and Safety Lead, redacted. User is spreading voter integrity concerns. Remove under TOS Section 3, do not elevate response. Now, some in the chamber shifted, some flinched. Third email, January 6, 2021, 12:03 p.m. Jasmine paused, just for a second, long enough to feel the weight of that date. Situation escalating. Flag content from users tagged Patriot or 7776 preemptively. A wave rolled through the room. Jim Jordan's face froze. Jasmine looked up. "Mr. Chairman," she said softly, "these are not the words of a platform acting independently. These are the fingerprints of a coordinated effort." She held the emails in the air, no need to shout. Not moderation, but manipulation. Jasmine didn't stop. She slid a second folder forward. "I ask unanimous consent," she said calmly, "to enter this exhibit into the congressional record." She didn't need to raise her voice. The silence around her did the work. She flipped it open. It wasn't one name. It was a list, a printed spreadsheet 6 pages long. The top read accounts flagged for reduced visibility or silent suppression. She read them aloud name by name. Sergeant Miguel L., retired Marine, flagged for posting concerns about Afghanistan withdrawal. Dr. Aba Kim, pediatrician, flagged for questioning mRNA policy in schools. Mrs. Judith Alvarez, middle school civics teacher, flagged for asking about election procedures. No threats, no violence, just questions. None of these individuals violated platform rules, Jasmine said slowly. They weren't suspended, just silenced. She looked up. Algorithmically erased from your feed, shadow ban, buried, labeled dangerous not because of what they did, but because of what they dared to say. Behind her, the screens lit up. Names, faces, quotes, Americans of all backgrounds, veterans, healers, educators, all disappeared from the public square for thinking out loud. Jasmine turned slowly toward Jim Jordan. This isn't about left or right, she said. This is about who gets to speak and who gets erased when they ask the wrong questions. Jasmine looked down for a moment. Then she said the one thing no one expected. Not a fact, not a rebuttal, a question. If big tech controls the information, her voice was calm, but it sliced the air. Then who's controlling big tech? The room didn't move. For a second, maybe longer, everything froze. No coughing, no typing, no shuffling of papers. Just a silence so complete it almost screamed. Jim Jordan stopped mid-page. A Republican aide froze with a pen halfway to his notebook. The camera zoomed in slowly. Journalists looked up. Members of Congress blinked. It wasn't just a question. It was a mirror. One that reflected something they hadn't wanted to see. Not just censorship, but power. Not just algorithms, but handlers. The people pulling the strings may not even be in the room. Jasmine didn't smile. She didn't look triumphant. She simply sat back and let the weight of the question settle. One sentence, but it shook the pillars of the hearing chamber. Jasmine didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She simply tapped her folder twice and nodded toward the screen. A staffer hit play. The screen flickered. Then came the voice. Male, cautious, slight static in the background. Look, we can't go public with this, the voice said. You want to keep your job right. A second voice, younger. Nervous, but it's clearly suppression. The entire thread was about policy concerns. Doesn't matter, the first voice snapped. You push it, you're out. Stay quiet, and in 2 months, you're promoted. The room stiffened. Jasmine didn't flinch. She turned toward the committee. That, she said, is the voice of a technical policy advisor from one of the top 5 tech companies in America, speaking to a legislative assistant from this very building. A few people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The deal, she continued, was simple silence buys stability. She paused. That wasn't moderation. That wasn't policy. That was a transaction. The silence in the chamber wasn't neutral anymore. It was disturbed, unsettled. Journalists scribbled. Jim Jordan didn't speak, because this wasn't about right or left anymore. It was about power traded in whispers, and now those whispers were playing on national television. Jasmine's voice stayed calm, but the words she read, they detonated like landmines. This is from a January 14th internal email she said between 2 senior policy officers. She held it up, then read slowly, letting every syllable sink in. Lupin JJ, hell, make noise. Then we'll move the slider quietly. She paused. Let the silence work. Then she added, for those unclear, JJ refers to Jim Jordan. A single gasp echoed from the press section. Then came a wave of murmurs. Chairs creaked. Pens froze mid-sentence. Noise, Jasmine repeated, wasn't a side effect. It was the strategy. While the public looked right, the system slid left. The implication was brutal. Had Jordan, the loudest voice against censorship, actually been used as cover to distract while the real work happened in the shadows? Or worse, had he known, some eyes turned toward him? He didn't meet them. He stared ahead, frozen. No rebuttal, no denial. Just the hum of cameras and the weight of a question no one dared ask out loud. Something in the room had changed. A minute ago, Jim Jordan was a general. Now he looked more like a man surrounded by smoke and no clear exit. His hands gripped the desk, his jaw clenched. That email could mean anything, he snapped. It's not proof, it's opinion. It's misinterpreted. But his voice cracked on the last word, and he knew it. So did everyone else. The reporters stopped scribbling quotes and started watching him. Not Jasmine, not the folder, him. Beads of sweat began to form along his temples. One rolled down his cheek unacknowledged. He adjusted his tie, his collar, even tried to smile, but it didn't land. Across the aisle, Jasmine Crockett remained still. She didn't speak, she didn't flinch, she didn't need to. The truth was doing the talking. And now for the first time, the audience wasn't sure who to believe. The defenders of truth or those who knew how to weaponize the illusion of it. The double doors creaked open, and in walked a man, no badge, no entourage, just a pair of worn-out shoes and tired eyes. "State your name," someone called. "David Langley," he replied. "Former lead systems engineer, retired, 65. His voice didn't boom. It didn't need to. He sat down, opened a folder. The room quieted like a theater before curtain rise. "For 10 years, he said, I wrote the very code that filtered your feed." Gasps, murmurs, pens paused. "You think it was random," he continued. It wasn't. He held up a printed document, line after line of keywords each tagged. Flag dissent, flag border policy, flag vaccine concern. These weren't just filters, he said. They were silencers. Reporters leaned forward. Even Jordan, stiff wide-eyed, said nothing. And sometimes, Langley added, we were told to run certain names through that filter by request. The camera zoomed, whose request asked a stunned voice. Langley looked up, not with fear, not with anger, just fatigue. Government staffers, legislative aides, even a senator's tech consultant. The silence was instant and thunderous. David Langley held the document like it burned his fingers. His voice cracked just slightly. "You want to know when I knew something was wrong?" He glanced down, then up. "The day my own daughter got flagged." The room blinked. She shared a post. Nothing violent, just a quote about human rights. He swallowed hard. Within 3 minutes, the post was gone. Account shadow banned, reach cut by 98%. A beat passed. "She called me crying," he said, asking if she did something wrong, if she broke the law, if she was in danger. Langley's voice trembled. "I built that system, and it punished her for caring." He looked toward Jordan, then toward Jasmine Crockett. "I stayed quiet for years. I told myself I was just writing code, that I didn't decide what it filtered." A tear welled in his left eye. But when your own blood becomes collateral damage, you stop hiding behind excuses. Silence, and this time it wasn't just shock, it was guilt and recognition. David Langley exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that carries a lifetime of regret. "I used to say it was just a job." He looked at his hands, then back at the room. "I told myself I was just feeding my family, that someone else made the hard calls. I just wrote the code." He paused. His voice grew quieter, but somehow heavier. But every time a voice was silenced, every time a good person was flagged because they dared to question, I was part of that. A hush fell over the chamber. "I chose the paycheck, not the principle." He looked at Jasmine, then slowly turned to the camera. "But today I choose the truth." Dead silence. Not a cough, not a whisper. One lawmaker leaned forward, hands clasped like in prayer. Another wiped his glasses twice, even though they were already clean. Langley's words didn't shake the walls. They shook people, not through outrage but through recognition, through the quiet horror of realizing we all let it happen. Jasmine Crockett stood, slowly, deliberately. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She held up one sheet of paper, plain white, but with words heavy enough to crack stone. "I'd like to enter this into the record," she said. Then she read aloud, "System Directive Log dated March 11th. Her voice didn't shake, it carved. Suppress based on sentiment, not source." She looked up. "That means she let it hang, let the weight settle." They weren't flagging posts because they were dangerous. They were flagging them because they didn't like the emotion behind them. She took a step forward. Not fact, not source, but sentiment. The room went still, because that meant no account was safe. Not left, not right, just human emotion, scraped, scanned, filtered, and suppressed. Jasmine didn't raise her hand. She didn't even lift her voice. She just turned the page and pointed, one sentence in a system memo, cold, plain, undeniable. Approved via JJ's office, Oct. 2021. She read it once, slowly. Approved via JJ's office. She didn't explain. She didn't accuse. She just let the room do the math. Jim Jordan's mouth opened slightly, not to speak, but to breathe. His hand moved instinctively as if to reach for something that could save him. But there was nothing. No folder, no chart, no retort. Just that single line, and the realization that the fire he lit was now burning toward him. The room, once roaring with fire and fury, fell silent. Jim Jordan stared at the table. His lips moved, but no words came out. Cameras captured it all. The sweat, the blinking, the sudden stillness of a man who had run out of places to hide. A chair behind him scraped. One of his most vocal supporters stood up. No words. Just a long, disappointed glance and then an exit. A second chair moved. Then a third. A slow trickle became a wave. Journalists whispered into microphones headlines already writing themselves. Was he the puppet master all along across America? People who once cheered Jordan's speeches sat stunned in front of their TVs. This wasn't just about big tech anymore. This was about betrayal, about being led to rage by someone who may have been playing both sides. Jasmine didn't hold up a document. She didn't need to. Her voice lowered not with weakness, but with weight. When I was 9, she said my mother, an ER nurse in Dallas, was fired after reporting a senior doctor for refusing care to a black boy. The room froze. She wrote it all down. She filed a complaint. She did what the law told her to do, and the hospital found a reason to let her go. Jasmine's voice cracked just for a second. I remember asking her, "Why did you do it, Mom? Why speak up?" And she looked me in the eye and said, "Because silence would have made me part of it." Jasmine paused. She chose truth and paid for it with her career. She looked up straight into the lens. Now I ask you, when truth costs everything, who among us is still brave enough to pay it? Jasmine slowly closed the red folder. No slam, no theatrics, just 2 hands lowering it like a flag at a half-mast. I'm not here to win, she said quietly. I'm here so I don't stay silent the way my mother once had to. The room didn't clap. They didn't need to. Because silence this time wasn't shame, it was reverence. The camera panned across the committee. Republicans shifted uncomfortably. Staffers stared at the floor. And then the lens stopped. On Jim Jordan, gone was the warrior with the gavel. Gone was the firebrand voice of outrage. In his place, a man slouched, slightly eyes unfocused, jaw set in quiet disbelief. Not a general, just a shadow. A figure whose voice once filled the room, now drowned in the weight of what was left unsaid. Jasmine turned to the room one last time. Not with fire, not with fury, but with precision. Her voice cut clean through the silence. If today, the truth can be exposed, then tomorrow, who will you try to silence next? Not a whisper in the chamber, not a shuffle, just stillness. Then she added, softer, but sharper than ever. You thought power was your weapon. Turns out it's evidence that scares you the most. Fade to black, and a single sentence appears. This was not a hearing, it was a reckoning. The replay button never looked so tempting. When silence is weaponized, truth must become our shield. This story isn't just about a courtroom clash or political power plays. It's about what happens when people in power believe they're untouchable, and one voice armed not with anger, but with facts refuses to stay quiet. Jasmine Crockett reminded us that truth doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. But when spoken at the right moment, truth can silence the loudest lies. In your life, when faced with injustice, whether at work, at home, or in your community, don't underestimate the power of holding the line, of standing firm even when your voice trembles. Because courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it looks just like you. If this story made you feel something, if it reminded you that truth still matters, then hit subscribe right now. Because here on AZ Exposed, we don't just tell stories, we uncover the silence. And if you've ever been silenced, ignored, or underestimated, this channel is for you. So subscribe, stay informed, and stay loud.